Listen, I've been in prisons, I've said over the years, probably 2 decades on and off, nonstop. The problem is, once you're introduced to law enforcement and prison system, it seems like it's a revolving door. You're back and forth because as a criminal, you don't change your ways. And now law enforcement knows who you are. And the problem with most people on the street, they think they're never going to get caught. In their belief, they'll talk that game about, well, I could do 20 years, I could do 10 years, it's not a big deal. But when reality check comes in and you got those handcuffs on you, and we say bracelets, and you go to jail and you're away from your family and the suffering starts to begin. So there is no good, there's only bad and ugly in prison. If anybody tells you there's good, I want to know where that's at, because the only good I could see is getting released again and going back to your family. And hopefully, for some reason, you change your ways. But solitary confinement is one of the worst conditions a human being could be in. You watch movies and you see that. You watch an army picture and you see prison of war camps. And it's not the physical. I've said this over and over again. It's the mental pain and the depression and anxiety that a solitary confinement cell causes. You know, guys don't realize, because you're out here in the everyday world and you're getting contact and love and affection, whether it's from a girlfriend, from your parents, from a family member, through an animal, a dog that you love, or a cat. But there's human affection that's going on in your life. In those solitary confinement cells, you're alone. There is no phone calls. There is no radio. There isn't books like people believe that you could just read and occupy yourself. You're waking up at 4:30 in the morning, through a mail slot in your door. You sub below. It's freezing in the winter. It's hot in the summer. And the time that you're spending in there is over and over repetitive. So if you wake up at 4:30 in the morning to chow, meaning breakfast through a mail slot, your tray comes in, you wake up, you eat your little tray of TV dinner of a breakfast, and now what do you do with yourself? What does your day look like? People don't realize your day is the same thing day and night. You're in a 6x8 cell, 6x6, because you have a rack there that's in your way. So it's a 6x6. You have steel toilet, steel sink, and you have no amenities, nothing. You got a camera on you in most of these cells now. If you're in a high security solitary confinement cell like I was most of the time, every time you go to the bathroom, someone's watching you. And it's complete repetitiveness that a day seems like 2 weeks. And there's no way to really get through that day because there's no way to occupy yourself. And if you get through a hard day, you're redoing the same thing again tomorrow. And it's not like you're only doing it for 24 hours or 48 hours. You might be doing this for months and years at a time. It's really cruel on the brain. It's cruel for humanity. And there's got to be other ways to punish an inmate if they're not following rules. And that needs to be talked about. But inmates and people that are on the street need to realize what we're talking about here. And, you know, I've said it over and over. Anybody that's involved with the system should have to spend a week as part of their training in a solitary confinement cell to understand even a little bit of what someone's facing. Because that week is not a lot of time, really, because they know they're getting out in a week. And they're not facing life sentences or sentences where you're taken away, you know, maybe possibly 5 years or 10 years or 15 years from your family. So you don't have the anxiety and the stress level also of facing some of these terms that some of the guys are facing. But it's at least some sort of an example to teach people that are curious, and for people that are training to be in the prison system, so they get an idea of what some of these inmates are going through. And for the kids and youth that are out there and young adults that are breaking the law, they got to understand they will be caught. I says there's not too many people that are fooling around on the street that don't eventually find themselves in the prison system.
Is rape prevalent in the prison system?
I mean, listen, jail, everything's prevalent. To what extent depends on what jail you're at. It depends on how you're living and conducting yourself in that prison. And it depends on what your jacket was out on the street. Were you a rapist yourself out on the street? So all those things contends on what's going to happen in the system that you're involved in and how you conduct yourself. But the everyday life of an inmate, and I've said this so many times, isn't the physical pain. It's the emotional pain that you're going to face. Detachment from human beings, detachment from your family, people dying on the street in your family, the unknown. And some of the emotional stuff is just incredible pain and depression people really just don't understand. And I think I got to just keep pushing this point so kids out there just second guess making that mistake and going to prisons.
If you said that to me, you would scare me straight.
The abilities, and I talk about, it's not so much you want to scare, you just want them to see reality. This is reality. Reality is you're going to ruin your life. And it's, doing 1 or 2 years like in the Army, this is not prison. Prison's not going to the Army for 1 or 2 years. You're going to be left alone and you're going to suffer. And you're going to have no contact with anybody when you're very depressed or when you're very down or you're very anxious. You're still stuck in that 8x6 cell with no contact, suffering. Every minute you're suffering, the next minute is the same thing, suffering. There is no relief. So, if you're at home and you're stressed and you want relief, you sit in a bathtub, you go take a shower, you call a friend, you pick up the telephone. In prison, in solitary confinement, there's no relief. And it's repetitive that you can't imagine the boredom and the depression that sets in with it. Just day and night loneliness. Minute, seconds that seem like months and years. People like myself, that repetitive behavior is because it's like training a dog. You teach a dog a trick and he does it constantly. I was raised and brought up in a world that it was normal to go in and out of jail. As bad as it wasn't something that I really understood or realized that I'm ruining my life. There's so much out here. And I think that's where myself, I've been through so much treatments, programs, and I have a great therapist that I've been dealing with for 30 years almost, that over the years I learned, and I've said it to friends and family, I learned to like myself. I learned to love myself. I learned to understand that some of my behavior before, violent behavior towards other people, whether they were wrong, right, or indifferent, wasn't the issue. The issue was, how do I react to other people? And instead of getting what I wanted, justice, by hurting somebody or killing somebody or robbing somebody, my reaction's different because I look in the mirror and I smile and I says, well, he's not beating me today. Me hurting him, killing him, or robbing him, he's beating me. I need to beat him by not reacting. I need to beat him by enjoying my life and showing success and smiling and enjoying life itself. That's beating those people that are on the street that are bothering you. Instead of getting out of a car during a traffic dispute, you got to keep going and say, it's not worth wasting my time for. And these are some of the things that we got to teach our kids. And the same thing with bullies. When these kids are in the schoolyard, they got to understand that bully is actually afraid of you, is actually intimidated you, is actually not happy. That's why he's bothering you. And you got to walk away and smile to yourself and say, if those kids are picking on me, they're picking on me because they're afraid of me. And know it. And go about your life and enjoy your day and go ride your bicycle as a child or go to the school and, get involved in a program where you're enjoying life. Because the bully behind you, something's wrong. They're not enjoying life. And don't put yourself back in their position.
John, thank you very much.
Nice to see you again, John.
I know you have a new book called Prison Rules. Tell me a little bit about your past before we get into the story.
Well, unfortunately, I was involved in the streets, and people that do know me know I've been in probably about 30 or more so prisons around the United States, the Northeast mainly, and then also out of the country in Brazil, in 3 prisons actually in Brazil also. Brazil is a third world country, obviously, through the media, CNN, and over the years while I was there and up till recently, there's deaths that are rampant. I believe it was just 68 guys just got killed again a couple weeks ago in the last 2 or 3 days in some incidents that happened in the prison system. There it's on another level of cruelty. There it rains inside your cells. There is no hygiene as far as toilets. You go into the bathroom on floors and holes. The bugs and rats and mosquitoes are rampant. There's diseases like dengue that guys are dying from. The air quality, people are dying because you can't breathe. The oxygen levels were so below. And we're physically abused. We're tied up, beat with rubber hoses, basically more so beat to your body, to your feet. And some of the Brazilian inmates, they get it worse because there's no countries that can really advocate for them. So inmates will get lost in the system there. They're tortured, they're killed, and they're raped by the system itself, not by other inmates. So we dealt with that, me and guys like Klaus, that's in my last book, that's still a very good friend of mine. And together, there was about 6 of us that banded together to survive those prisons by being physically aggressive, with our finances, bribery, and by our methods of trying to escape, and weapons that we purchased within the system. But it's a completely different system that people that are aware of the international system in Brazil understand. Like some of the senators did reports in some of the jails I was in, like Ari Franco, that he'd rather die than spend one night there. Bangu 2 was another penitentiary I was in, and the water levels at one time were up to my waist with rats. I mean, besides that, you just can't imagine the suffering that goes on in those systems. So we're not, the United States is nowhere near like those systems, fortunately for us here in this country. But we still have a long way to go in the United States also. So it's something that I think that we all need to work on. And hopefully some of the people I've been speaking to involved in this system in the United States continue talks with me to help reform some of the jails here, and some of the things that some of the inmates and family are going through. I'm originally from New York, got involved with the mafia in New York, Gambino families, specifically in prisons in Florida, California, New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, upstate. So I've been around the block a little bit. I wanted to open the eyes of some young kids that are heading the wrong direction, and also to advocate for some changes with the prison system. Prison life isn't life, and that's the reason why I wanted to do this. I want people to understand there's a beautiful world out here from state to state, country to country, and human beings aren't meant to be locked down like an animal in cages. And I'm trying to help some people that are going in the wrong direction to realize there's a beautiful world. Follow that. Don't follow the streets.
Is there a hierarchy in prison?
Without a doubt, there's always a hot list in prisons, meaning the warden, assistant wardens, and the government officials are looking at probably the top 100 people that are in those prisons. Guys like myself that are on those hot lists, and they're worried about you being violent, controlling the jail and outside the jail and the streets still. So there's definitely hierarchy, and it's definitely geographic also in prison.
In your book, you referred to yourself as being violent. Were you put in a certain kind of environment because you were violent?
Well, naturally, I mean, again, law enforcement and inside the prison, outside the prison are there to protect the public, and inside the prison also to protect other inmates. So if you have the jacket, meaning my record as being violent, yeah, they perceive me as being violent because I was violent, and they want to look and protect other prisons just in case that's the direction I'm going to go, or other prisoners like me are going to go, trying to enforce what we want to be done on the street and in prisons.
You describe in your book solitary confinement.
Well, I think there's got to be other ways to punish a prisoner, whether it's myself or somebody else, while you're in the system, because to me it's very inhumane. You don't have contact with other people. Your spirit is, the idea is to break you down and kill the spirit, and control the inmate through not physical torture so much, but mental torture, and being locked in a cell, cameras in those cells. You don't have the privacy of going to the bathroom, privacy of taking a shower. Showers are probably 2 or 3 days a week, times a week. Get chained up on the way in, on the way out, and no contact as far as letters. And even though you should be getting them, you don't get them. Writing them out takes weeks at a time. So I mean, there's things that go on obviously in solitary confinement 24/7. That you're alone, and I spent years like that, and other inmates have spent years like that. And it's something that you could put your dog in a cage and lock them in, and that's what's done to human beings. I just don't think that's the answer to some of the problems we're having with some inmates in society.
Drug trafficking in a prison, it's kind of prevalent.
I mean, drugs in the United States itself is an epidemic. I think that we need to do a better job as a country to help the individuals that are having these drinking and drug problems, and better programs, better rehabilitation. And within the system, nothing's changed. You sell drugs out on the street almost as easy as you do inside the prison the same way. So that's definitely an issue.
Well, how do drugs get in prison?
You have a lot of ways. I mean, like anything else, everything that is built to stop, somebody finds a way to knock it down. So inmates, before going to prison, they'll swallow a balloon full of drugs. They'll have visits. They'll have drugs brought in. They'll have corrupt workers that work within the prison system that bring it in. You have guards that bring it in. So I don't think human nature is people break the law, and I think some of that is bringing drugs into a system that guys that have drug habits and can't beat it because the real rehabilitation in those systems aren't good enough. They're going to do anything at any measure to get those drugs into themselves.
I kind of got the impression that, well, as a civilian, that people who are addicted or active addicts and go to prison, they're going to get clean when they go in prison. You got to look on your face.
I have to laugh at that because the system isn't really built to stop them or help them from using drugs or alcohol in the prison system. Prison system, the mentality I think of a lot of the government officials is to not rehabilitate, is to punish. And punishing a drug addict or an alcoholic is not the answer by locking them in cells and locking them in solitary confinements. They need help. It's not, to have a physical issue is also a mental issue. And the mental issue brings that drug dependency and alcohol dependency. So we have to do a better job with helping these guys not commit crimes because they're looking for drugs or alcohol or the depression that sets in. So there's got to be a way that I think the United States isn't doing enough to stop some of the epidemic. And everybody knows, it's no secret, it's an epidemic of pills, especially now poppies. So I don't know what that answer is, but I think there's got to be more done in Washington on this.
That was one of the things that you went to prison for, stealing drugs?
I dealt drugs and violent and anything I could make money with. So drugs was definitely part of that. And I manipulated people on the street that I know had drug issues, and I got wealthy off that.
Do you ever have any thoughts about that? The families that you may have affected?
Without a doubt. I mean, that's part of my everyday. I live with that, and I think one of the reasons I advocate the way I do is because I know it needs to be changed because I was on the other side of the fence at one time. So the last decade, I'm on this side and realizing where the system's being exploited and how to possibly change it and help some of these people that don't belong in jails, but they belong in some sort of treatment centers to help them mentally. And so this doesn't continue. Obviously, it's going to continue because locking up more and more people isn't helping the situation. Well, I think it takes the power. The federal guidelines takes the power away from the judges as human beings to say, I don't think this should be this way or that way. It ties their hands a little bit. And they reformed that recently slightly, but it still doesn't give the judges the ability to go outside a lot of these guidelines in the state and federal system So I think they need to free that up. And I think, again, there's got to be better programs within the system and outside the system. So guys, it gives the judges the ability to send these guys to rehabs and AA places for alcohol abuse, which is, to me, I categorize them both as drugs. One doesn't have a difference to the other. It's a dependency, and dependency is a mental problem, not a criminal problem. And I think that it's got to be changed somehow.
What was the movie you were in?
I've done several pictures. I just did a Netflix film that'll be out in, I think, January, February of 2020. Perfect Gangster 1 and Perfect Gangster 2 is coming out now, won some awards. GQ, I just came out in I think it's 4 editions of the June version of from the UK, from the British edition. They did an article on the mafia, the past, the commission, and interviewed me about what's the change of the mafia from years ago to today in the streets, and what's my take on it. Well, back in years ago, I think it was the mafia had a reputation of being gentlemen, well-dressed, and secrecy. That world has changed. It was very violent back then. That world has changed today to more of money crimes, Wall Street banking, not as much violence. But the drug trade still exists as it did years ago. I don't think that's going to change because it's something that can be exploited for a ton of money. And anytime anybody can make money, they exploit something.
Thank you.